Well, new satellite images over China are sparking concern, with pictures revealing the country's efforts to build up anti-carrier capabilities. Well, the images show Beijing's military has built mock-ups in the shape of a US Navy aircraft carrier and other American warships, possibly as training targets. Now, this all coming as tensions with Washington remain high over Taiwan and the South China Sea. Satellite images also showing a 6-metre wide rail system with a target mounted on it, which experts say could be used to simulate a moving vessel. All right, let's bring in now Dr. Malcolm Davis, who's a senior analyst at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, joining us there from Sydney. Dr. Davis, thanks for coming on. Tell me, how worried should we be about this, given that Beijing is denying knowing anything about it, but it's pretty clear that something is going down here?
Yes, they are denying it, but obviously everyone knows that these mock-ups are there, and the Chinese are testing what's known as anti-ship ballistic missiles, or ASBMs, on these targets. And the purpose of these tests is to develop these missiles to be able to destroy US Navy aircraft carriers and allied ships out at sea at long range. And I think that the Chinese are definitely seeking to achieve a military advantage here in any future conflict over Taiwan.
Yeah, for sure. It's highly concerning. And tell me, what is the latest on this situation with Taiwan and China as it stands, Dr. Davis?
I think that the concern, certainly within the Australian strategic policy community here, I'm actually in Canberra, not Sydney, but also across the region, is that there is a growing risk of major power war between China and the United States over Taiwan in the second half of this decade. Certainly, Xi fully intends to try on against the wishes of the Taiwanese people, I might add. Most of the Taiwanese people do not want to unify with China. But Xi wants to do this certainly probably by the second half of this decade. And the concern is that this will lead to an outright military conflict with grave possibilities for escalation, both in terms of the geographical spread of that conflict, but also potentially in terms of escalating through the nuclear threshold.
So in your opinion, has the global community, the international community, been sort of neglecting keeping an eye on China, with so many other big stories really capturing the attention of the world? Has China been sort of going on with all of this in more of a clandestine type of way?
Look, I think we've been aware that China's been building up its military capabilities for some years. I do think we have switched our focus away from, for example, the war on terrorism that has occupied much of the international attention since the events of 9/11. We've switched our focus away from that to quite correctly focus on the growing challenge of major power war, particularly with China, but also with Russia. And I think we're now starting to change and adapt our military capabilities and our force structures to prepare for that possibility. So the US is making this switch. Most other Indo-Pacific states are making this switch. And I would argue that in Europe, you're seeing the same thing happen with NATO. So there is this change in recognition that the threat environment has evolved, and we have to be prepared for that major power threat out into the future.
Is there anything at all that can be done to sort of put the brakes on China?
I think the best thing that we can do is to try and deter China from taking actions against Taiwan or in the South China Sea. The best way to do that is by establishing multinational groups of states that can work together. Most recently, this has happened with AUKUS between the UK, US and Australia. But also the Quad is really important in terms of bringing in India and Japan. If we have that multilateral grouping of states in the Indo-Pacific that are prepared to stand firm against China, they may be deterred. But if they're not deterred, if they do take actions in the second half of this decade, then we have to be prepared to fight and defend our interests in the Indo-Pacific. And that includes Taiwan, it includes the South China Sea, and various different other regions in the Indo-Pacific area. And so, sometimes you do have to defend your interests against an aggressive power.